There was a young boy who lived in ancient China in a small little village with his family. Although he was from a small little village, but he had a big dream. And that dream was to become a martial arts champion. But of course, he had a condition. And that condition was that he would not learn martial arts from just about anyone. He wanted to learn it from a perfect master. Okay? And see, back in those days, if you had to learn martial arts from a perfect master, you had to be prepared to live away from home for an extended period. Okay? Because you had to actually go to the monastery where the master lived, live with him, serve him in order for him to teach you something. Right? Now, obviously, because the boy was really very young, the parents were reluctant at first. But eventually, looking at his enthusiasm, they gave in. So finally, his family and friends, they give him a farewell, and he finally arrives at the monastery. Now, his expectation was that the moment he arrives, the master is going to start teaching him some fancy moves. But to his utter disappointment, none of those things happened. Instead, what happened really shocked him. The master asked him to pick up a small pot which was lying in the corner of the room and walk up to a nearby well, which was about 100 yards away from the monastery. So he basically wanted him to fill that pot with water, come back to the monastery, and fill up a cask that was lying in the middle of the courtyard. Now, the only problem was that the cask was really very huge and the pot was very small, which meant that he would have to make a number of rounds in order for him to fill up that cask up to its brim with water. Now, finally, when he was able to fill up that cask up to its brim with water, the master asked him to do something very strange. He asked him to hold his hands up like this and splash the water with both his hands really hard as if he was hitting someone. And he asked him to keep doing that until the water level really dropped. And after that, he asked him to repeat the entire process of going back to the well, filling up the cask with water, and repeating the whole thing over and over again. Okay? Now that's how he spent the entire day. Although he was really frustrated and angry, but he was also a little bit hopeful. He felt that maybe tomorrow the master will teach me something worthwhile. Okay? But unfortunately, the same thing continued the next day. And the day after that. For the whole week. For the whole month. And the same thing went on and on for the next few months. Now, although the boy was utterly frustrated and angry at the master, but he could not express his anger because, of course, he respected him, right? But, he had spent about a whole year with the master, and there came a time when the master would let him go home for a short break and come back again. But hearts of hearts, he knew that once he reaches home, he is never going to come back to this place. He was a little bit ashamed of himself because he didn't know how to face his family and friends. Because they were under the impression that he has come here to learn martial arts and he is definitely going to come back and demonstrate his art to them, right? But that wasn't the case. He hadn't learned anything in this 1 year. So finally, when he reached home, of course, his friends and family, they gave him a warm welcome and they treated him. They literally treated him as if a superhero had arrived, right? And they kept pestering him to show some moves, right? He kept avoiding it for some time. He spent a whole week in the village. He kept avoiding the request, but beyond a point, he was not able to do it because they kept pressurizing him. So that made him very angry one day. So he lets out a loud yell from his mouth and he hits a table in front of him really hard. And to his amazement, that table broke into 2 pieces. That table was about 2 inches thick. He was shocked. Okay? He didn't know that he was capable of doing something like this. See, that's when it dawned upon him that what the master made him do, the exercise that the master gave his hands, had made them so strong and capable of doing something impossible for a boy his age. See, that's when he learned 2 important lessons in his life. That if you have a big dream, are you willing to pay the price? That's the first lesson he learned. That there is a price you have to pay. Okay? Nothing comes easy. You must pay the price in order for you to achieve your goals. The second lesson he learned, that when someone has already been through this entire process and has achieved what he wants to achieve, all he had to do was surrender to that person and his process. Okay? These were the two important lessons he learned that day. And after that, he was more than eager to go back to the monastery. Now, why did I tell you this story? The only point that I'm trying to make here is that, see, I could have given you these two messages directly, okay? But remember, if you can wrap these messages in the form of a story and then deliver to the audience, that has a much better impact on the audience. Simply because, as I have mentioned earlier in all my earlier videos, that stories are a way for you to connect with your audience on a much deeper level. So whenever you want to deliver something important in terms of a message, make sure that you emotionalize the message. Don't just throw information at people, okay? So I hope this was helpful, and definitely use this in your communication. Thank you so much for watching.